Now for business updates across the globe, Rotus Udiri joins us. Good morning, Rotus.
Good morning, Dr. Good morning, Rufai. Good morning, Ayo. Good morning to all our viewers. All right, well, really quickly, kicking off with, I think, the Asian markets mixed in Thursday trading following that Fitch downgrade. I think technology stocks in Hong Kong were what supported the Hang Seng Index, and I think the Kospi in Korea, which were in positive territory, or was it the Shanghai Composite Index? Either way, the markets were mixed. We go to PMI services data for China. From Caixin, there, along with the S&P Global, which is basically the services side, not manufacturing. So the PMI, though, stands for Purchasing Managers Index, where you just go around asking businesses how are things going. It expanded. So if you're above 50, you're in expansion territory. If you're below 50, you're contracting. So you expanded from June to July. However, the official numbers from the Chinese showed it decelerating. So there's a bit of a divergence between the two numbers, but it's instead that maybe it's how they conduct or they conduct these surveys. But still, China's still showing a bit of a weakness. Brazil, we talked about this in What to Watch. They've turned dovish. Only about 10 economists that were surveyed thought they were going to cut rates. So it was cut by 50 basis points to 13.25%, their first rate cut in about 3 years. And this is the key thing. Brazil's inflation up until mid-July, year on year, 3.19%. It's below the central bank's target inflation range of 3.25. So they are, they've announced that they're going to look at more rate cuts going forward. To the United States, we're seeing Andrew Bailey, the Bank of England is expected to hike rates again today. This will be the 14th time in a row later this afternoon. Market expectations are anywhere from 25 to 50 basis points as far as what is expected. He has still repeatedly said that inflation is still an issue. Their target 2% inflation, well above their target range. Then to the U.S., the Fitch downgrade, as much as it was dismissed by, even Jamie Dimon, CEO of JP Morgan, came out saying it's nonsense, it's irrelevant. The market still fell. So the Dow Jones, the S&P 500, the NASDAQ, especially the tech-heavy NASDAQ, particularly big fall there. 217 basis points. And then a raft of data coming out of the US, especially with respect to, private sector. We're going to get the jobs numbers, official jobs numbers tomorrow, but this is from ADP. Private sector employment, look at that, 324,000. The forecast was for 189,000. So it was well above the forecast, but still lower than June. So the United States, the labor market is still pretty strong. And a strong labor market means that wage growth, at least wage inflation, is still going to be on the strong side. And so there's still pressure on the Federal Reserve to cut rates because, again, as you put more money in your pockets, people will purchase more items and that will keep prices upwards. Then to the home, so very interesting data as far as mortgage applications. We talked about this in our What to Watch yesterday. So they did fall week on week 3%. This period last year, down 26%. Mortgage applications basically to purchase a home. Essentially, interest rates, I just mentioned the Fed, as they've continued to climb, it's made purchasing a home in the United States more expensive. If we look at refinance applications, those also fell as well, 3% year on year and 32%, rather 3% week on week, 32% year on year. Interesting data here. They also released, and this is the thing, this is good when you have data, the top 5 nations that are at least foreign buyers of U.S. homes. China topped the list, followed by Mexico, Canada, India, and Colombia. So as much as there have been issues between the U.S. and China, they're still very much buying U.S. real estate. And then what else is on the move here? Okay, yeah, so this is the number of homes bought, 84,600 homes, as in foreign purchases of U.S. homes. It's down 14%, but the median price of the home purchased by a foreigner, U.S. home purchased by a foreigner, $396,000, highest levels, since those records were being, calculated. So, yeah, and then I think we get to Africa now, yeah? Apple. Apple, we're looking for their Q2 earnings later today. The forecast is for revenues to be about 81 billion. Then we look at their product lines as far as what is expected. iPhone is still leading the way as far as forecast. So these results are not out yet. This is what is expected. iPad are seeing an 11 to 14% drop, and people just don't seem to be buying iPads anymore. Mac still up there, and then their services revenue, Apple Pay, iTunes and things like that, Apple Music. That's expected to bring in about $20 billion. So the second quarter is usually pretty weak for Apple. It's the third and fourth when children are going back to school, asking their parents to buy laptops and so on and so forth. That's when you see a jump. So it's expected to be a slowdown as far as what we expect. But Apple's cash and cash-based security, I think it's about 200. This company is sitting on about $250 billion in cash. So we'll see what the numbers are when that is released. And then what else are we expecting today? I think there's the headline, the end. I was pretty surprised. Coming to Africa now, today's headline with Tinubu's promise of the PH refinery ready by December, Labour suspends protests and extends dialogue. Ayo, you were speaking earlier about their key demands, and you said chief of which is the refineries. I am still not sure, why the obsession with the refineries. Because again, as we have explained, if even with the refineries working at full capacity, you are not going back to pre-subsidy prices. So why they continue to push these refineries is, as Dr. noted yesterday, they have workers there. So is it personal interest, or is it a fundamental misunderstanding of how the markets work? Why not push for more private sector modular refineries? If you pick an output of, pick a number, 30,000 barrels a day for a modular refinery. If you get 10 of them, that's 300,000. If you get 20 of them, that's 600,000. And that exceeds the output of those 3 zombie refineries that we're still been waiting to bring back to market. So if you bring more modular refineries in the private sector, you create more jobs. And of course, there are environmental concerns. So I think that should be the focus. And then the minimum wage, they want 200,000. I know they're aiming high. I think that should be the main focus there. And then an update on Niger. There was a Bloomberg article saying that the U.S., the ambassador to Niger, is saying that I think he gave an interview saying that the junta is actually starting to talk to the regional, there it is. So Niger ambassador sees junta surrendering power as sanctions bite. And again, from the electricity being cut off to the assets being frozen to basically the isolation, it seems like, we'll see when that deadline of them releasing Bazoum. Well, his name is Kiari Liman Tinguri. So he was speaking to them just yesterday to Bloomberg TV and said that the sanctions, quote, in the middle paragraph there, the sanctions have started having an effect in Niamey as we speak. The military junta who has launched this attempt will come to reason and give back power to save the unnecessary suffering of our people. So fingers crossed that the sanctions actually work.
Number one, I'm quite happy about that. I hope the sanctions work rather than going to a war that we can't afford at this point in time. And I hope the sanctions kick in. For those that have argued that the sanctions work, yes, in countries like Niger, based on what Bloomberg is saying, it is working. But it's also incumbent on, will Niger be able to find their way around it? Since we've frozen the accounts and all of that, I just hope this continues and we just settle all of this rather than going to war and putting boots on the ground. As regards the refineries, there's a story on the 3rd of May in 2023 in Business Day newspaper that talked about the fact of what I was saying yesterday. And the story said the federal government has directed NNPC to sell crude to all operators of modular refineries at the official dollar rate of $4.60 to local refiners and all of that. But the money should be sold, they should buy the crude in Naira. Because one of the concerns of the modular refinery operators, and concerning what Labour is fighting for, in all the developed countries of the world, you need a raft of refineries, plus the big ones and the modular ones, to be able to buffer, to be able to get to a certain level where you can even also export. And I get Labour's concern. Labour's concern is those big refineries. Dr. But you were speaking this morning, and you said they've itemized 1.5 billion to this Port Harcourt refinery. Dollars. So should we forget the money? Should we act like they've not even pumped money? It is for us to forensically investigate the NNPC and tell them to cough out that money and let's see what's been done. So should we say we should just leave it like that? Didn't President Muhammadu Buhari come with the promise of fixing refineries? You have 60,000, I don't know what their capacity is. I know Port Harcourt was upgraded to 65,000. You have 2 or 3 of them, plus many other modular refineries that still need $100 million, like they say, to be able to buy reformers. Because the way most of these modular refineries are fabricated, they don't have reformers that will now be able to make them produce petrol. That's why you see that they produce heavy oils and some other oils now. So if you have a raft of all of this, then at some point we can even start to export to Niger and the other part. And why is this such a big deal? It's working even in Niger. We have Sawyer's refinery. That is in Niger. So if a refinery can work in Niger, why can't it work here? So it's a raft of measures. And based on this, when I was saying it yesterday, based on what the government has also even said, but the problem with the government is that the government doesn't even follow through what it says. If you can sell to them in Naira equivalent, at least they stop that border of going to they prepare their Naira. And I am not saying, like I repeat, that it's going to go back to the pre-existing price. What I am saying is that at least you are not going to have freight costs, you're not going to have all this landing costs. And from then on, when it gets tough, we'll still have to put in some subsidies. And please, let's go back to this analogy. This talk about, we shouldn't subsidize, leave it to free market. Even the bastions of capitalism still subsidize energy. America has subsidy on fossil fuels and the likes.
On this segment.
So this is developmental economics, not neoclassical economics here.
All right. Just a very quick comment because of our time, Rotis. I was just going to also speak to that because it's not just Labour that's pushing for the refineries working. NNPCL as well, and the Nigerian government have come out a number of times, and that's why that investment in the 4 refineries. Mr. Mele Kyari, when he came on the show, had clearly stated, just as you mentioned and you said a number of times, that it's not to go back to pre-prices. But he did speak about the second point you made, which is about workers, the value chain in terms of creating employment. So that's a big factor. And NLC should be at the forefront of protecting their interests in that way. So it's quite valid. So beyond that, it's also holding the government to account that you made a promise, fulfill the promise, let the refineries work. It's very important. So just to mention, and not just because of the impact on the price of fuel. And then there's a story with regards to China. And the fact that tech companies' valuations came down because there's a proposal by the CAC in China to reduce screen time for young people, for children. And I thought that's quite interesting because we've had quite a challenge in that area. Reduce screen time, monitor children below it's still under it's still just a proposal, but let's see if that would come into play and if perhaps other countries would take a leaf or borrow a leaf from that. Yeah,
China should allow parents to decide how much screen time their children have. My issue, as always, with the People's Bank, with the Communist Party, there is the control over the economy. So things like that. That's why stocks would. Why won't a stock fall if you're limiting your? So let parents make that decision. Doctor.
Well, I mean, Alibaba says stocks fell, and yes, it's still a proposal open for discussion. But you recall that in 2019, access to video games for young people in China was restricted, right? Because the influence of technology was being interpreted by the Chinese authorities. The Cybercrime Commission Agency, the CAC, is saying it amounts to spiritual opium. What they are proposing now is that persons between the ages of 16 to 18 should not have access to iPhones and all this internet for more than 2 hours. If you are under 8 minutes per day, but the concern from a parenting dimension, you can also understand. Because if you look at our own environment here, these young people, they spend too much time playing with internet, doing video games. So I agree with you about parental responsibility. But the state is so much of a leviathan in China. That's one. UK interest rates, I thought you were making light of it. The prediction is that it will go from 5%, base rate will go to about 5.25%.
Or
because
5.5.
The prediction is 5.25. Because the Bank of England is determined. And this is the 14th, increase in interest rates consecutively. The last time it went up to 5.25 was as far back as 2008. But who will suffer? People who have mortgages. But maybe savings will go up. Maybe inflation will come down a little. As for Jamie Dimon, reaction to Fitch rating.
And the US markets.
He may downplay it. He may say it doesn't matter. But it doesn't matter. Global stocks fell. As far as Asia, even all the major US indexes fell on the basis of that declaration. What is established is the difference between what that an A can make from AA plus, from AA downgraded to AA plus.
Yep.
And you could see how the markets reacted. So Jamie Dimon, Lawrence Summers, former Treasury Secretary, Janet Yellen, you know, the man from Allianz, Eliran, I think that's his name.
Yep.
They may say it doesn't matter, they may downplay it. Well, they may just be talking about patriotism. The markets have responded. Indeed. And Jamie Dimon himself recognized the fact that it's the market that will give a verdict. Finally, yesterday we were talking about rice.
Yes.
And India saying non-basmati rice cannot go out. And I was talking about the countries that are affected. Thailand has also imposed restrictions. And Thailand is the second largest exporter of rice. What is Thailand's grounds? That there isn't enough water due to reduction in rainfall. So they are now telling rice farmers in Thailand not to plant rice so that they can conserve water for human consumption, and they can focus on wheat or millet that do not consume so much water. If Vietnam imposes its own reactions, and Cambodia, which also produces about 36% of global export of rice, we may not be able to eat rice again in some parts of the world. That is the implication.
Indeed.
And knowing that I like jollof rice,
me too.
I keep monitoring the rice market on a global scale.
No, pepper soup is rice pyramid. We have rice pyramid. So why are you afraid?
Where are the pyramids?
They shouldn't touch pepper soup so that it's not double jeopardy.
No, that one is safe.
Jollof rice.
Thank you very much.